you went to the chiropractor before, and that was kind of the last straw, and that was the same with me. So I'm kind of wondering, where are you at on chiropractics? Do you think it's a legit service, or do you think it's kind of like, and I don't want you to tear anybody down and get sued, but where I'm at on it is I go there, I feel great like that day when I leave, and then the next day I'm back to where I was. So I'm not 100% a believer in chiropractics right now.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Without like naming anybody, or
Right.
I think it has its place. From my research I've done, and again, I'm no doctor or scholar. I've just used my own personal body. But when you're getting that cracking sensation, it releases some endorphins, and there is some research that you get some short-term relief. But I personally believe I trained with a physical therapist when I was a medic for a while on a national tactical team. And I learned a lot doing trigger point relief. I think a lot of times we focus on the musculoskeletal system, which is kind of what chiropractics does, instead of, your actual muscles. And there's a lot of research that shows, sometimes these trigger points can be relieved. And yeah, I'm just not a fan of chiropractors. And there is some studies out there. Well, not studies, but I mean, if you look, there's people that get killed by chiropractors, especially when you're letting them near your neck. I mean, it doesn't take much to break somebody's neck. And I can tell you I wasn't in pain in my neck. I just had some numbness and tingling. And when I saw that chiropractor and he cracked my neck, man, the pain that came on after that and the days that followed was almost intolerable.
Yeah. The trigger point therapy. Tell me a little bit more about that. I haven't used that as kind of an alternative type kind of treatment. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about trigger point because I've never used it.
So again, I think I've lived a pretty busy life, work hard, play hard, and I've been plagued with injuries, lower back injuries, neck injuries. I've had two shoulder reconstructions, two lower leg surgeries, and so I I believe that if you go to Western medicine, if you go see a doctor, they're going to give you pain pills and you're going to get surgery eventually. And that's not a knock on the system. And I'm not saying don't take pain pills. And I'm not saying that surgery doesn't help. Surgery actually helped me. However, I got to the point where I just, I didn't want any more surgeries. And so I became a medic on a national tactical team and I had to get continuing medical education hours. And I happen to live in a city where somebody else had screwed up the system in the hospital and I wasn't allowed to go get there to train. So I ended up meeting a physical therapy doctor who I did jujitsu with that I learned. I mean, I kind of trained under this guy for several years, just kind of going in there. And not only was he fixing my own problems, I started referring people there. And that's kind of when I learned about trigger point modalities. And man, it has saved me and it's probably saved at least 7 of my friends from surgery. Especially when you start talking about the lower back. There's so much going on and in the lower spinal cord area, and that area is such a thick area. And I think sometimes MRIs, can get construed, or doctors get, you know, doctors don't make their money from patient visits; they make their money from surgeries. And again, I'm not saying surgeries aren't necessary. Sometimes you need them, dude. And yours obviously, relieve that pain. But trigger points, man, for me have been massive. I have a crushed vertebrae in my lower spine, as well as I had a herniated disc in my lower spine, and my back used to hurt so bad I'd get out of bed and I'd fall on the ground. My daughter would have to come pick me up. I'd have a hard time walking, and it kind of came and went. And the VA wouldn't prescribe pain pills, and so I would just have to suffer for a couple days. Then I met Sander, this doctor, and I started learning about trigger point therapies. And I started learning that my particular issue was, especially with my lower disc herniations, and my spine was out of alignment. So, I also had found a guy named Naudi Aguilar, and Naudi has a company called Functional Patterns. So I learned first about trigger point therapy and kind of trigger point relief from this Functional Patterns guy. And then that really helped me. And so when I met Sander and Sander started talking about the trigger point therapy, I was already kind of tuned in and he kind of really just dialed it back. So for me, my trigger points were in my hip flexors and right in my lower, butt cheeks, dude. And I learned how to use a lacrosse ball to not only relieve my trigger points in my hip flexors, but also, in my butt, man. And it cured most of my back pain.